Good afternoon, everybody. Today we're going to be looking at a state. If you recall from the first module, we said that states are big actors when it comes to global affairs. So today, what exactly do we mean by states? Remember that in international affairs, when we use the term state, we are not talking about states the way we talk about them in the United States. In international affairs, when we say states, we are not talking about Georgia, Tennessee, Vermont, or Wyoming. States are, in this instance, countries. Let's begin. So, a state must have four things: it must have a population, territory, government, and sovereignty. Some of these should be logical to you. Population, territory, government, like these all have to go into making a state. We're going to talk quite a bit about sovereignty and what that means in just a few seconds. So first, let's look at the Westphalian states. The Treaty of Westphalia in 1648, as I'm sure you remember from your world history classes, ended the 30 Years' War. In international affairs, we think of the Westphalian as the Treaty of Westphalia as establishing the Westphalian state, which means each government has sovereignty over their country. Again, that word sovereignty, we can come to it, I promise. Um, it says that within a state, there is a government and it has complete control over the territory that is their state. And with that, there is no state above another state. So that means all states are theoretically equal. So Canada cannot tell the United States what to do. Canada has no authority over the United States, just like India has no authority over Saudi Arabia. And because of this, because there is no higher authority than states, we call this system in the international order anarchy. When we hear anarchy, we tend to think of like dystopian novels, dystopian media and film. But in global affairs, anarchy simply means that there is no global government. States are the highest political authorities, and that each state has sovereignty within its own borders. So let's talk about sovereignty and what exactly that means. Sovereignty is the monopoly on the legitimate use of force. You're going to need to write that down and memorize it. Sovereignty, the monopoly on the legitimate use of force. In the Westphalian state, uh, sovereignty is a monopoly on the legitimate use of forces. There again. Okay, there are two types of sovereignty, or two types of sovereignty. The first of the two types of sovereignty is the complete control and autonomy to govern the affairs, the economy, the legislation, and the political order within the governed territory. This is called internal sovereignty. The complete control and autonomy to govern the affairs within a governed territory. Internal sovereignty. So, what does this mean? It means that states and their governments get to decide what kind of government they want to have. They can be a democracy, a republic, a one party military. They can be a democratically communist country like Nepal is. They can be a constitutional monarchy like the United Kingdom is. But internal sovereignty means that they get to decide what kind of government they're going to be. And internal sovereignty means that they get to decide all sorts of laws like educational laws and traffic laws and how to enforce these laws. Um, Internal sovereignty means they get to like make health and safety regulations and all sorts of decisions within the political borders, within the territory of the citizens. Internal sovereignty means the government makes all the rules and how people within the territory are going to behave and interact with each other. So let's look here again. A state must have a population, territory, government, and sovereignty. And part of internal sovereignty is also legitimacy. It is the consent of the population within the territory to be governed. This is part of internal sovereignty. In the United States, we have legitimacy because of our Constitution. We, the people, decide that the Constitution is the law of the land, and that our government must function in that way. Legitimacy is part of internal sovereignty. So, what states have internal sovereignty? Well, it's pretty easy. Think of a state, and they're going to have everything that we're talking about, right? So, with Cuba, they certainly have a population, they have a territory, it's an island 90 miles from Cuba. Um, they have a government, it is a one party socialist republic, um, and they have sovereignty, right? Um, Haiti can't tell Cuba what to do in any way that France can't tell Cuba what to do, the United States can't tell Cuba what to do. We are all equal, and there is no authority higher than Cuba in Cuba. Similarly with Bhutan, it is a territory with high in the Himalayas. It has a population. Its government is a kingdom. The people love their king. They tried being a democracy a few years ago. Didn't go out. It didn't go well for them. People really, really love their monarchy. Um, and in Bhutan, there is no authority higher than the state of Bhutan. China can't tell Bhutan what to do um, any more than Liechtenstein can tell Bhutan what to do. And same with Armenia, it's a country, people, territory, government. They're a republic similar to the U.S. and Canada. And inside Armenia, there is no higher state. There's no higher authority. So let's look back at the Westphalian state and at that definition again of internal sovereignty, complete control and autonomy within a governed territory. But then if we think about this definition a little deeper, then we start to run into a few problems, one of which is like Hong Kong has a population in an island territory. It makes many of its own laws. It is a democracy. As it has been said, Hong Kong is the most state-like state that is not a state. They even have their own currency. They have their own diplomatic relations, but they are not a state. They are part of China. And similarly, but a bit different than Hong Kong, is Taiwan. Taiwan's official name is in English is the Republic of China, and it also has a population of territory, and it has more sovereignty than Hong Kong does. It has more internal sovereignty than Hong Kong does. It has population, territory, government. They're a democracy also, but they're not a state. And then you have Kosovo, also population, territory, a bit autonomous from Serbia, but they're not a state. And so why is this, right? Like they fit a lot of the they tick a lot of boxes to be a state. But the second definition or the second type of sovereignty, I should say, is the recognition from other states. This is considered external sovereignty. And back to our three places. With Hong Kong, nobody thinks they're a state, and people in Hong Kong don't think they're a part of state. Don't think that they're a separate state. They agree that they are part of China. And in Taiwan, only 17 other states recognize Taiwan. And a big way to be a state, at least to be admitted into the UN, is the United States, the United Kingdom, France, China, and Russia all have to say you're a state, and none of those five, even the United States, does not say that Taiwan is its own state. We all say it's part of China. And with Kosovo, of those five states I just mentioned, only the United States, the United Kingdom, and France recognize Kosovo. Russia and China just believe that Kosovo is part of Serbia. So ultimately, with external sovereignty, you only get to be a state if other states say you're a state. And this can be challenging when you have, like, let's say you have, I don't know, Russia says that here's a state and this government is a state, but there's not a lot of internal sovereignty, and the people say, no, we don't like this state, we don't like this government, and we want a new government to exercise sovereignty. Then you get places like, I don't know, Syria, right? Where Russia is saying that the Ba'ath Party has the legitimate use of force within Syria, and they are supporting that government, but the people are saying no, it can lead to civil war. So when we're talking about states and IA, we're not just like going on fun little fact-finding missions. This has real implications for billions of people in the world. Billions with a B. All right. So in English, we tend to talk about countries, states, and nations interchangeably, but they are not. So we just talked about a state. So what exactly is a nation then? Another definition for you. A nation is a large group of people with strong bonds of shared identity. And I want you to pause the video and I want you to think of at least 3 strong bonds of shared identity that you might think of within a people group. Pausing. All right. I hope you got at least some of these. Ethnicity is a big one. Language, religion, culture, history, geographical proximity, and shared destiny. These all go into making a nation. The second part of this is it's an imagined community. Whereas a state is a political ideology, nations are just imagined. They are socially constructed. And part of this imagination, part of the social construction, is that they might have national education, national anthems, national flags, myths, holidays, compulsory military service. But if you look at this list, you might think, well, there's a lot of states that have, national anthems and holidays, right? But it is important to remember that nations are not always states. Nations are actually rarely states. There aren't a lot of nation states, nations that are states in the world. You have Japan, as one, Armenia, I mentioned earlier, Bangladesh, Korea is a nation state, but there aren't a lot of nations that are states. And maybe the most famous one right now are the Kurdish people. The Kurds are a nation. This is their Kurdish inhabited area. They want a state, specifically after World War I and World War II. The breakup of the Ottoman Empire after World War I, they really wanted a Kurdish state. If the Kurds ever get a state, it's not going to be as big as you see on the map right now. The Kurds have inhabited huge parts of Turkey, huge parts of Iran, parts of Iraq and Syria. It's a Kurdish state will never be that big, but they are a nation, and right now the most famous nation without a state. So to recap, nations and states. Some nations do have their own states, but not every nation is a state, and not every state is a nation. States are political entities. Nations are groups of people with shared identity, which is going to bring us to nationalism and patriotism. Here's your definition for nationalism. It's the ideology that recognizes the nation as the primary unit of political allegiance. It's saying, let's continue with the Kurdish example, saying, no, 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 no. I am not part of Turkey. I recognize myself to be a Kurd first. And nationalism is especially true as a way to alienate people who are other. It's a way to put people into us versus them, which is going to become pretty important in the next module. And nationalism also seeks political control over territory claimed by the nation, right? So nationalism, they think that their nation should be a political unit and that states are fine, but that states should be built around the nation, and that the state should support that nation. And here we go. Nationalism is the belief that the nation should be a political unit, and believe that states should be built around nations. Sorry, got a bit ahead of myself. This is all different from patriotism, which is kind of just a love of country, where nationalism is a love of identity, and it's a superiority complex. Whereas where nationalists believe that my nation is better than your nation. So let's break nationalism down into 4 different types. The first is civic nationalism. Civic nationalism is based on citizenship. They believe that All members of a society, regardless of their ethnicity, are equal members of the nation. Um, it's almost patriotism on steroids, but not. We also have ethnic nationalism, who it depends on blood and relies heavily on history and culture and many times religion. Um, and that belief in blood, um, that ethnicities are blood ties. This is called primordialism. Um, and if you remember back from our definition that nations are imagined communities, if you were to ask an ethnic nationalist, or if you were to tell them that they are not real, that they're just part of some imagined community, they would say, no, 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 no. I am ethnically part of this nation. Um, Look at my blood. We are all individual, or we are one nation. We are not imagined. How dare you? And so it is important to remember that when we use the term imagined communities, we are looking at we are being social scientists looking into other people groups. And so where we say nationalism and nations are imagined communities, specifically somebody from ethnic nationalism, they would not say that it's an imagined community. They would say that it is a real community. Um, and kind of linked to civic nationalism is the pro-state nationalism. This type of nationalism supports the existing state. It acts as the link between a unified people and their legitimate government. And let's see, the reverse of that is the anti-state nationalism. They are against the existing government. They their unifying ideology of a people who oppose what they view as an illegitimate government. So, not to start a flame war, comment war on the YouTube video, but you can think of this as a pro-state nationalism might be nationalistic Israelis in what they see as the legitimate Israeli state, and anti-state nationalism might be Palestinians who are unified in what they see as an illegitimate state, that is the Israeli state. So, in summary from this module, we have learned that states are political entities with both internal and external sovereignty. States are political entities, and nations are usually ethnic or cultural identities. We've also learned that patriotism is the love of country, whereas nationalism is the recognition of the nation as a primary political allegiance. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in Module 3.